In the dimly lit confines of a Pennsylvania mint during the height of World War II, clinking machinery echoed through cavernous halls, pressing countless one-cent coins into existence. The year was 1944, and the United States was entrenched in a global conflict. Copper, essential for wartime ammunition, had been redirected from coinage to bullet casings, shell casings, and communication wire. The U.S. Mint had adapted swiftly, replacing copper with zinc-coated steel for pennies in 1943, a practical decision born out of necessity. Yet, in the following year, the copper returned. Or so it seemed. Across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, copper planchets were once again fed into presses, creating wheat pennies that would be carried in the pockets of citizens from coast to coast. They were simple coins, meant for simple transactions. No one gave them a second thought until, much later, someone did. An amateur collector, a teenager from Illinois, ran his fingers through a dusty mason jar of old coins passed down by his grandfather. The jar had sat, untouched, in a forgotten cabinet, its contents heavy with oxidation and time. He didn't know what he was searching for, perhaps a glimpse of history, perhaps nothing at all, but as he held the 1944 penny between his fingers, something felt off. It wasn't the date, nor the design, it was the color. Not the ruddy brown typical of copper. This coin shimmered faintly, almost coldly, under the light, like polished iron. He brought the coin closer. Its face bore Lincoln's profile, resolute and unwavering. The reverse displayed the twin wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent, as it should. But the metal, it was too light, too silvery. Curiosity soon turned into fixation. Under a makeshift magnifier, a lens taped to a flashlight, the teenager studied the coin's surface. Faint scratches marred the fields, but what stood out was the steel gray tone and slight magnetism. He placed a small magnet over the coin. It jumped. The jar was forgotten. The air around him seemed distilled. A week later, after countless hours of research and online discussions with more seasoned numismatists, the theory solidified. This was no ordinary 1944 penny. This was something altogether rarer, a coin minted in error, a relic of transitional chaos, born not from design, but from oversight. A steel planchet from 1943, somehow left behind and struck with the 1944 dies. The boy's discovery set in motion a series of events he could never have anticipated. The coin, once thought to be a fluke, was confirmed through metallurgical analysis. It was, indeed, composed of zinc-coated steel. It matched the exact composition of the 1943 issues. And yet, the date was clear, 1944. The initial excitement gave way to a broader mystery. How could such a mistake occur? The Mint had declared all steel planchets removed from the system at the close of 1943. Still, records were never perfect. Planchets could lodge themselves in nooks of minting machinery, forgotten and wedged tight, only to dislodge and feed into the presses months later. That's all it took. One oversight. One moment of mechanical indifference. And now, the world had a 1944 steel penny. The numismatic community stirred. Other collectors began to examine their holdings with renewed scrutiny. Slowly, a pattern emerged. A few more 1944 steel cent surfaced. Philadelphia struck the majority, though rumors swirled about ones from Denver and San Francisco. Some dismissed them as hoaxes. Others whispered about shadowy caches hoarded in private collections, never to see the light of day. As interest grew, so did the coin's value. At first, modest offers trickled in hundreds, then thousands of dollars. But as public fascination sharpened, auction houses began to circle. In the early 1970s, one 1944 steel cent fetched a five-figure sum, a rarity back then for a penny. Decades later, as market demand for high-grade errors surged, the price ballooned. This unassuming error, born of wartime haste and industrial neglect, began to rival coins steeped in mythology. Some speculated that fewer than 30 existed across all mints. Others were less optimistic. The coin's true rarity remained shrouded in uncertainty, and that only fueled the desire. By the 2000s, its legend had crystallized. Collectors with deep pockets entered bidding wars for authenticated specimens. Each public sale escalated its worth. A Philadelphia minted steel cent in near-mint condition eventually commanded over $100,000. Still, rumors lingered about a higher-grade specimen in private hands, untouched, pristine, quietly passed through generations without a public debut. But even as the coin's value surged, its secrets hadn't all been laid bare. The 1944 steel cent had an even stranger sibling, one almost no one believed until physical proof surfaced. Deep in a dealer's backroom, in a coin flip stained by decades of humidity, a penny was discovered. It was dated 1944. But it wasn't steel. And it wasn't copper. This one was bronze. Not copper bronze. Not the wartime alloy. It bore a golden hue, slightly heavier, slightly thicker. It confounded even seasoned metallurgists. As it turned out, the planchet was a foreign blank intended for a coin in another country entirely, one struck under U.S. contract. Somehow, this foreign planchet had made its way into the U.S. minting system, and had been struck with the same 1944 wheat cent dies. The implications were dizzying. If one foreign planchet had slipped through, could there be others? What else had been struck in error and overlooked? The discovery turned the field on its head. Suddenly, the 1944 steel cent wasn't just a wartime oversight, it was part of a broader pattern, a rare confluence of human error, international production, and mechanical accident. Collectors who had once scoffed now scrambled to revisit their archives. Coins were tested, scanned, weighed, and scrutinized. Every 1944 penny was a potential mystery box. Dealers offered free magnet tests at conventions. The air was thick with anticipation, yet not all the stories were triumphant. Some hopeful collectors uncovered coins that mimicked the steel cent's color, but were nothing more than post-mint plated fakes. Disappointment haunted many. But every now and then authenticity rang true, and a life changed overnight. For one elderly man in Ohio, the discovery came not through obsession but through luck. His daughter, clearing out his belongings, found a coin in a shoebox, alongside war medals and ration booklets. The coin was a 1944 steel cent, perfectly preserved. It had been given to him by a fellow soldier before deployment to Europe. Neither of them had known what it was. The coin was later auctioned for over $150,000. Still, the twist that rippled through the numismatic world came not from these auctions, but from a mint archive uncovered in 2019. An internal memo, never released to the public, detailed a known batch of leftover steel planchets that were mistakenly used during the early weeks of 1944. The number, 24. Just 24. No official recall had occurred. No announcement made. The memo was buried, until now. The memo ignited the community. 24 known steel cents. But more than 30 had already been documented. The numbers didn't add up, which meant only one thing. Either the mint's estimate was wrong or more errors had occurred than anyone knew. That revelation shifted everything. The 1944 steel penny wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a symptom of broader systemic issues during wartime production. The very chaos of war had infiltrated the minting process, and in that chaos, anomalies thrived. As demand soared, so too did the efforts to counterfeit. High-end replicas flooded the market, some so convincing that even professional graders were challenged. Certification became essential. Slabs of clear plastic holding a single coin now dictated the flow of tens of thousands of dollars. But even with all the technology and authentication, nothing could replace the thrill of discovery. That moment when an unassuming penny is revealed to be something more, a key to a forgotten moment in history, a product of error and circumstance, now priceless. The 1944 steel wheat penny was never supposed to exist. And yet, Its very existence has become a defining symbol of numismatic rarity. A fluke that outlived its era. A mistake worth more than 1,000 flawless coins. And behind every one of them lies a story waiting to be told. Because sometimes, history hides not in museums, not in monuments, but in the hollow sound of a coin striking metal once, and never quite the same way again. The year was 1957, and the hum of machinery echoed through the halls of the Philadelphia and Denver mints. The United States was in the throes of post-war growth, with optimism surging across the nation. Pennies, humble and often overlooked, flowed through presses in the millions, destined for pockets, drawers, and forgotten corners. The wheat penny, with its distinctive reverse showing twin stalks of wheat, had become a familiar sight since its debut in 1909. By now, it was a quiet relic of Lincoln's enduring legacy, a common thread woven through American commerce. At face value, the 1957 wheat penny was nothing special. Over 1.3 billion were minted across Philadelphia and Denver combined, most bearing either the plain date or a small D mint mark. To the casual observer, these coins were indistinguishable from their counterparts minted just a year prior, or even a decade before. The details of Lincoln's bust on the obverse, the simple yet iconic wheat stalks on the reverse, and the unmistakable copper shine all pointed to a design that had seen few changes over nearly 5 decades. But somewhere within the massive flood of copper since, a subtle anomaly had been born. An anomaly unnoticed for years. Decades later, a seasoned collector named Henry Olson sat at his kitchen table in Omaha, Nebraska. His passion for coins began in childhood, flipping through pocket change and filling cardboard folders with the scent of age and discovery. Now in his 60s, Henry's pursuit had grown more refined, his instincts sharpened by decades of study. He often bought rolls of old wheat pennies from estate sales, auctions, and local shops, always on the lookout for something that defied the ordinary. It was during a cold February evening that Henry cracked open an unassuming roll of wheat pennies he'd acquired at a farm auction. Most of the coins were worn and predictable, some with scratches and discoloration from years of circulation. But one caught the light a bit differently. It looked like any other 1957 D wheat penny at first. But Henry's practiced eye caught a minute irregularity near the 7 in the date. It seemed doubled, faintly but unmistakably. Curiosity piqued, he held it under magnification. The doubling was evident not just on the date, but subtly on the letters, Liberty, and even the "In God We Trust" inscription. His heart skipped. Could this be a genuine double die? He'd heard whispers of 1955 and 1969's double die since, famous among numismatists. But 1957? That wasn't supposed to exist. The official guides made no mention of it. It wasn't listed in the Red Book or the online forums. But Henry knew what he saw. The doubling was clean, pronounced, and in the right places. This wasn't machine damage or a die clash. This was something rarer. Days turned into weeks as Henry consulted with fellow collectors and experts. Most were skeptical at first. A 1957 double die? It sounded implausible. But when the coin was examined in person, opinions changed. Numismatic experts verified the anomaly. A double die obverse, caused by misalignment during the hubbing process, had indeed occurred. Somehow, a small batch of these coins had escaped detection. Only a handful of similar examples had ever surfaced, and none with this degree of clarity. Henry had found something that shouldn't have existed. News of the find spread quietly, but swiftly among serious collectors. The 1957 D double die penny was born into legend, not through fanfare, but whispers in the corners of coin shows and in the footnotes of collector newsletters. As more people revisited their collections, a few additional examples were found, though none as crisp as Henry's. With each new discovery, the coin's mythology grew, and so did its desirability. Initially, the market was unsure. How do you value a coin with no precedent? In 1995, Henry's coin sold privately to a collector in Pennsylvania for $1,200. Modest by today's standards, but groundbreaking at the time for a coin that many still dismissed as an anomaly. Over the years, the value ebbed and flowed. As more examples emerged, the price dipped, but never dramatically. The rarity held. Then, in 2009, as the Lincoln cent marked its centennial, interest in wheat pennies surged. Henry's coin, now part of a notable collection, was auctioned again. This time, it fetched $9,700. The once dismissed anomaly had become a symbol of overlooked brilliance. Physically, the error was not dramatic to the untrained eye. There were no missing elements, no broad strikes, no clipped planchets. The coin was fully round, uniformly copper, and seemingly flawless at first glance. The error lay in the subtleties. The doubled die was a product of a rare misstep in the die-making process, where the design was imprinted onto the working die more than once in a slightly offset alignment. This caused the date and lettering on the obverse to appear doubled, giving the illusion of a shadowed echo. But this doubling wasn't due to poor striking or wear. It was part of the coin from birth. What made it more astonishing was its timing. By 1957, the mint had refined its processes significantly. Quality control was stringent. The use of single-squeeze hubbing had been introduced in later decades to eliminate such errors altogether, but even in the late 50s, multiple squeeze hubbing was done with extreme care. For a double die this clean to slip through was a puzzle. Some theorized that the die had been used only briefly before being pulled, producing perhaps a few thousand coins at most. Fewer than a dozen high-grade examples have surfaced since. But the twist came in 2018, when an unexpected clue emerged. A retired mint employee, cataloging personal effects, found a small batch of internal memos dated 1957. One note referenced a DDO anomaly on cent die batch #4PD and mentioned a directive to scrap the affected dies immediately. The memo was never released publicly, never entered into official mint reports. Its discovery verified what collectors had speculated for decades. The mint had known, albeit quietly, and taken steps to erase the mistake. This revelation redefined the coin's narrative. It wasn't merely an accidental survivor. It was a near-erased relic, a whisper of resistance against a system designed for perfection. Suddenly, its story wasn't just about doubling. It was about evasion, survival, and quiet legacy. The value climbed again, and when another high-grade specimen surfaced in 2022, it sold at a major auction house for $23,500. Collectors who had once overlooked their 1957 descents now scoured them with new purpose. Forums lit up with photos, magnified scans, and hopeful attributions. Most were wishful misreads, cases of machine doubling or die fatigue. But one or two were real, confirmed by experts, and folded into the growing list of authenticated examples. For Henry Olsen, the journey had long since moved beyond the coin itself. It became a symbol of patience, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. He had once described the moment of realization as a quiet thunder, the feeling of finding something monumental in the most unassuming of places. His find proved that even among billions, a single penny could defy expectation. The story of the 1957 double die wheat penny now holds a revered place in numismatic history. It serves as a reminder that no era of minting is immune to human error, that even in times of precision, anomalies persist. But more than that, it reveals how history, chance, and the eye of a devoted collector can converge to resurrect a coin from obscurity and raise it into legend. And somewhere, perhaps buried in a forgotten jar or tucked inside a decades-old collection, another waits to be found.